Hello, welcome everybody. Tonight we're very honoured to have a guest speaker, Gary Kidgell, all the way from Dundee via the internet. So Gary has studied the wisdom teachings for over 35 years. He's a professional astrologer specialising in esoteric astrology. So he's lectured extensively on esoteric subjects, as well as undertaking numerous astrological consultations throughout the UK and in Europe. He joined the Theosophical Society in 1994 as a founding member of the Dundee Lodge and as president. He's the current organising secretary for the Theosophical Society in Scotland and the librarian for the Theosophical Society in Scotland charity. So under the auspices of the late Dr. Douglas Baker, Gary obtained the Cleargate College Bachelor of Metaphysics degree in 1994. He was thereafter invited to become a tutor for the course. Between 2010 and 2014, as the Director of Studies for the Cleargate Metaphysics Group, he compiled 2 online audiovisual courses based on the wisdom teachings as outlined by Douglas Baker. One, Foundations in Esoteric Studies, and Esoteric Psychology, the 7 Rays. So Gary possesses a particular interest in the symbolism of myth, dreams, and meditation, and its capacity to enable one to practice higher manas or abstract thought, the current frontier of human consciousness. So his first book, which is a lovely book, The Inner Journey, Pathways to the Higher Self, has been distributed internationally. And his second work, Greek Hero Myths, Pathways to Higher Consciousness, is due for release in the near future. So Gary brings passion to a vast knowledge and wisdom, and I'm really looking forward to his talk tonight. So over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Teresa. I hope I can live up to that lovely introduction. I'm sitting here thinking, who's that guy she's talking about? I'm going to use a PowerPoint display. Teresa's going to put up images or slides one at a time, and I will comment on each one. There should be an introductory slide just giving the title, Perseus, Pegasus, Medusa, Pathways to Higher Consciousness. That's a play on my forthcoming book. And this is a potted version of the Perseus myth, how it appears within the book. So if we move to the first image, we're actually looking at an Indian image here of the lingam penetrating the yoni. This is used to depict the transcendent principle pouring out its energies into the field of space and time and giving rise to all the various planes of consciousness. This is a representation of what we refer to as the hieros gamos, or sacred marriage, that which creates and sustains our universe. When we consider the archetypal god and goddess in embrace, we are considering the generation of life itself and its profound mystery. We must always be aware that the divine is both transcendent and immanent of its creation. But this interaction between God and goddess is what gives rise to manifestation. If we consider the next image now, here we see Vishnu reclining on the waters of space. From his navel protrudes a lotus, and from the lotus, the creator god Brahma emerges. Now that lotus is a symbolic depiction of what we refer to as the goddess, the divine feminine. We must bear in mind, as divine sparks or monads who are undertaking a long evolutionary journey, that we do so within the realm of the goddess. Very important to be aware of. The goddess is a symbol of deity manifest, all its energies and processes. And so we journey within her particular realm. Sometimes the archetypal goddess will assist us on the path. Sometimes she will put obstacles in our way, but always towards the same end, that of us acquiring what the wisdom teachings refer to as spiritual staying power, i.e. our ability to radiate and express spiritual qualities regardless of our circumstances in life. So if we go to the next image now, in Greek myth we have Zeus and Hera. Hera is the consort of Zeus. Hera is deity and manifestation. Zeus is the supreme Olympian. In the hero myths, he is symbolic of our spiritual essence, the monad, which I referred to. And quite amusingly, fascinatingly, correctly, Zeus and Hera are always quarreling, like any good marriage. But this is symbolic of the tension, the inherent tension between spirit and matter. These ultimately must be conjoined in the higher initiations of theosophy, the individuation of Jung. This is when we affect the hieros gamos in microcosm, in accord with the emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, whose injunction can be summarized as above, so below. So if we go on to the next image, here we see three Olympian goddesses. Before I comment on them, Carl Jung used the term archetypes or divine ideas. Plato introduced this. Adolf Bastian, the 19th century German polymath, he developed this, and these were taken further by Jung. In theosophical terms, these are the ideas of the great solar consciousness, which we are a part of, evolutionary blueprints. And the ancients sought to depict these divine ideas by the various mythic characters and by the mythic tales. Now, in Greek myth, in the hero myths, the two goddesses who figure most prominently are Hera and Athena. Athena is a warrior goddess of civilization, goddess of wisdom, and she is the great patroness of the heroes. As a rule, Hera tends to test the heroes, goad them, place obstacles in their way, whilst Athena assists them. And when we are following this evolutionary journey within the realm of the archetypal goddess, both of these things are going on. Ted will tell you, when we make that commitment towards treading the path, the higher self will test us to ascertain our worthiness, will seek to offload further karma. We are being tested within the archetypal realm of the goddess, but at the same time, we are also being assisted when we set foot upon what Blavatsky referred to as the steep and thorny road that leads to the heart of the universe. So if you can have the next image, please. Madame Blavatsky used the term the veil of Isis, which obscured the transcendent principle. In the tarot deck, the card, the High Priestess, is situated between the points or sephirot on the tree of life called Tifereth and Kether. Think soul and monad. And when we tread the path, seeking to penetrate the veil of Isis, we are looking to acquire what the great 20th century student of myth, Joseph Campbell, described as the secrets of the goddess. And these are the secrets of life itself, beyond name and form. And the goddess guards these secrets very jealously, only revealing them to those who demonstrate their worthiness and can overcome the veil which she casts over creation, which the Hindus refer to as Maya, or illusion. So now if we move on to the next image, We are considering then one of my favorite hero myths, that of Perseus. Here we see a photograph of Perseus in the center of Florence. If anyone hasn't visited the center of Florence, I would very much advise it. Really beautiful place with the Uffizi Gallery just around the corner and all these magnificent mythic statues under the shelter there. So we're considering the myth of Perseus. So if we move to the next image, Joseph Campbell used the term the hero's journey to describe the mythic, or we would say spiritual quest. And he illustrated that there are three principal stages of separation, initiation, and return. And we must be aware, as souls in matter, that for many lives, the soul is looking to garner more and more experience in terms of the outer world. But there comes a time when it reaches a saturation point, when the transitory affairs of the outer world no longer satisfy nor sustain us. They lose their luster. We begin to look for deeper meaning in life, and something happens, or a series of events happen, which draw us to the spiritual path. Campbell uses the term call to adventure in terms of the mythic heroes, and that is when we extract ourselves from the rank and file of humanity and venture into the mythic landscape, the subjective realms of the human psyche. We are tested many times within these realms, and if we demonstrate our worthiness, we undergo initiation. And then, as the wisdom teachings would inform us, the initiate then carries out a portion of the divine or evolutionary plan. This is what Campbell referred to as the return stage, where one offers the lessons of one's illumination to others as an act of service. So if we go on to the next image, Perseus is the king of Argos, and he is in great despair because he's unable to father a son. He consults the Delphic oracle, and he is advised that he will suffer death at the hands of any son born to his daughter Danae. So, as one would expect, he's not too happy about this, so he imprisons Danae in a tower, a bronze tower, surrounded by savage dogs. However, this does not prevent Zeus from coupling with Danae. He adopts the form of a shower of golden rain, cascading down through the roof of the tower. He then couples with Danae, giving birth to Perseus. And anyone who studies the Greek myths, they will find that the heroes tend to either be of divine parentage or divine lineage. They have a mortal mother and an immortal father, or divine lineage. This is symbolic of the immortal aspect of our being, but we are also incarnate within matter. If we go to the next image, jumped ahead now, I wasn't sure, but we'll keep talking. Perseus then is trying to stand against the evolutionary process. He's trying to sit out the dance of Shiva Nataraj. He is not embracing the evolutionary flux of the cosmos. He's under this fallacious assumption that he can subjugate others by his will and determine his own destiny. And anyone with a smidgen of knowledge about relating to the wisdom teaching knows that it is the higher self, in accordance with the great planetary consciousness which it is a part of, which determines one's destiny. So when Perseus is born, Perseus panics. He knows he can't slay the child or he will incur the wrath of the Furies. So he places Danae and Perseus in a chest and casts them out to sea. They land at the island of Seriphos, where they are rescued by the fisherman Dictys. Of course, the sea features very prominently in myth. It is representative of what Jungians call the unconscious. The sea journey is always symbolic of a transformative process. Hindu teachings describe the spiritual path as crossing from the shore of everyday life to that of transcendence, and this is challenging river or shore crossing. Now, on the island, Polydectes, the king, wants to have his way with Danae. As Perseus grows older and stronger, he is preventing this. Then Polydectes hatches a plan. He invites the men of the island to a banquet, and they are asked to bring horses for the hand of a girl named Hippodamia. Perseus has no horse to give, so he suggests very impetuously that he could bring the head of Medusa. If we look at the next image, please. Here's Medusa, with protruding teeth and tongue and writhing snakes for hair. So the call to adventure is a bit different in this myth, in that it is an act of impetuousness which leads to Perseus embarking upon the mythic adventure. Medusa was once a beautiful maiden, but she lay with Poseidon and then was cursed with these terrible looks. Now, in terms of the goddess archetype, she is representative of the most terrifying, most awful aspects of our journey through the realms of matter. This is something we must all face. Not just the terrible aspects of life out there, but what is within our psyche, particularly what the wisdom teachings refer to as the dweller on the threshold, all of the personality attributes which have accumulated over our many lives, including our fears and various repressed and undesirable characteristics. And at an advanced point in our evolutionary journey, when we tread the path, we must effectively confront Medusa and the dweller on the threshold. So if we go to the next image, when we tread the path, as is alluded to earlier, we do receive assistance. And Perseus receives this in the form of a great sword given to him by Mercury, which he can use to decapitate the Gorgon. Whilst Athena, or Minerva here, that's a Roman equivalent, gives him a polished shield, because to look at Medusa directly, one will be petrified and frozen, turned to stone. But this shield is to enable Perseus to look at the reflection of the Gorgon and thereby decapitate her. Mercury, or the Greek Hermes, is the psychopomp, the guide of souls. He flits up and down from Mount Olympus, interacting in human affairs. He is what Jungians call the psychopomp, the aspect of the higher self which conveys these divine messages to us in the forms of meditation, dreams, and synchronicities. And we receive such assistance when we tread the path. And there is the aspect of the goddess, Athena, giving him this mirror shield, which we're going to look at a little bit later. If we go to the next image, Perseus, however, has to do work himself in terms of requiring the magical aids which will enable him to overcome Medusa. He has to acquire a magic bag which is in the possession of the Stygian nymphs, a magic bag into which he will place Medusa's head, so then it is not turning anyone to stone, but he can, if he wishes, use it towards those ends. He also requires the helmet belonging to the god of the underworld, Hades. This renders one invisible, which is a great advantage in any sort of battle. But it is the Graeae, whom we see on the Burne-Jones painting here, three old hags who share an eye and a tooth between the three of them. It is the Graeae who are aware of the location of these magical aids, where the Stygian nymphs hold them. And Perseus observes the Graeae from a distance. He notices that one of them is passing the eye to the next one, and he rushes in, intervenes, and seizes the eye, and informs them that he will give it back to them when they reveal the location of the Stygian nymphs. The Grey A readily do this, and he proceeds on his way. So the Grey A relate to aspects of what Jungians would call the lower unconscious, lower aspects of the astral plane, which we must overcome when we tread the path. The Stygian nymphs relate to the energies of the planes of the soul. Joseph Campbell illustrated, when one enters a church, they are entering a sacred place, representative of the spiritual planes of consciousness. And on the old medieval churches, on the outside, there would be hideous gargoyles and various little monsters that you had to pass through, which is symbolic of the fact that we have to deal with these aspects of our own psyche before we enter the sacred realm. So if we go to the next one, here's Medusa, who resides within a cave. Very common symbol. Hercules or Heracles overcomes the Nemean lion within a cage, symbol of the personality. Spiritual transformation occurs within its subjective levels of the psyche. So if we go to the next image, Medusa then. Here is a quote by the Jungian analyst Arthur Neumann about the petrifying gaze of Medusa. He uses the term Great Mother to describe the archetypal goddess. And rather what I was saying, this is the most terrifying aspect of our evolutionary journey within the realm of the goddess. Here we have the quote, "The petrifying gaze of Medusa belongs to the province of the great goddess, for to be rigid is to be dead. You must embrace the universal flux." This effect of the terrible stands in opposition to the mobility of the life stream that flows in all organic life. It is a psychic expression for petrification and sclerosis. The Gorgon is the counterpart of the life womb. She is the womb of death, or the night sun. Rather similar in some ways to the Hindu Kali. And we can only overcome this aspect of our journey if we are connected with the immortal aspect of our being. If we are functioning as a personality simply, we cannot win. However, when we access the energies of the higher self, when we are aware of the immortal aspect of our being, that we are not going to die, when we transmute the fear of the solar plexus chakra into the courage of the heart, along with the unconditional love and compassion, etc., we are on the way to being successful in this confrontation. If we look at the next image, here is the helmet of Hades, or helm of darkness. This is symbolic of someone who, through spiritual disciplines, purifying their vibrations, is effectively invisible to the denizens of the lower astral plane, or what Jungians would call the energies of the lower unconscious. So in the next image, please, Teresa. So Perseus enters the cave where Medusa and our two sisters are. He uses the mirror shield to navigate his way through the cave without looking directly at Medusa, views her in the shield and decapitates her. And from her head emerges the winged horse Perseus. This is one of my favorite paintings, by the way, by John Singer Sargent. What we are looking at here then is, by successfully negotiating this terrible trial and the dweller on the threshold, we are then able to ascend to the Olympian heights, or the spiritual heights. This is symbolized by the winged horse Pegasus, of course. If we look at the next image, here is Minerva giving her shield to Perseus, or Athena giving her shield to Perseus. Now, this is the symbolism of the mirror shield is very, very important. If we go to the next image, if we use esoteric astrology, The opposing signs of Virgo and Pisces are extremely relevant here. Pisces ruling the unconscious, Virgo ruling purity, refinement, discrimination. Now, Indian teachings often refer to the personality as a mirror, also ruled by Virgo, and how if we undertake certain spiritual disciplines, we effectively clean the mirror so the light of the higher self, the Hindu Atman, can shine upon it. The Hindus talk of vasanas, or tendencies, which are carried over from previous lives, derived from what are called samskaras. Don't bother about the terminology, but these tendencies, the vasanas, give rise to what they call vrittis, thoughts which are entangled with our desires. And when we meditate, when we serve humanity, study the wisdom teachings, we are effectively polishing, cleaning that mirror of personality so it can reflect the light of the soul, of the spiritual planes of consciousness. And it is only when we can do that that we are able then to fulfill the great challenges symbolized in the mythic tales, and particularly in this one with Perseus confronting Medusa, overcoming the darkness, then Pegasus emerges. Of course, so Medusa is serving an extremely valuable point in terms of creation. She has an extremely valuable role, just as Kali does. Everything within creation is divine, and we must bear this in mind. We demonstrate our spiritual staying power when we successfully negotiate such challenges. So if we look at the next image, here again, Perseus. Now, Hesiod informs us that when Pegasus, struck the ground with his hoof, the Pierian spring emerged. This is the spring of the Muses. If we look at the next image, we'll see the Muses, the retinue of Apollo. The Muses were derived from a relationship between Zeus and Mnemosyne, Zeus being the monad, Mnemosyne meaning memory. And when we receive visitations from the Muses, we are reminded of our divine origins. The Muses are symbolic of the planes of consciousness where the soul is found. It's from these levels that inspire all the seers and sages, artists, poets, metaphysicians, inventors, scientists, and so on. To be inspired by the Muses means to be inspired from the levels of the soul. And if you're inspired from the levels of the soul, then you are doing work which is in accord with the planetary consciousness. So Perseus is gains his entitlement by confronting Medusa. Very important to bear in mind. So now if we look at the next image, 7 planes of consciousness. The reason I chose this, if you look at the upward pointing triangle, in Theosophy we say Atma, divine will, Buddhi, love, wisdom, Manas, the higher mind. When we are inspired by the Muses, we are inspired from these levels. You will see the personality, a downward pointing triangle, and the link between them, the rainbow bridge or Antakarana, from which the energies precipitate downwards if we are inspired by the Muses. So if we come to the next image, Perseus then is on his way back to Seriphos when he spies the beautiful Andromeda chained to a rock. Andromeda's mother, Cassiopeia, had foolishly boasted that her daughter was more beautiful than the sea nymphs, the Nereids. And Poseidon did not like this one bit. He created great storms and sent a sea monster named Cetus to devour inhabitants of the city in Ethiopia. The only way out of this, so the oracle of Ammon advised the king, was for Andromeda to be chained to a rock and to be fed to the sea monster. However, Perseus witnesses this, dives downwards, uses the helmet of invisibility of Hades and the sword of Hermes to slay Cetus. And in rescuing Andromeda, he falls in love with her. He goes back to the king and asks him for the hand of Andromeda. But Andromeda's uncle Phineus is unhappy because he has been promised her hand. Many believe it's simply to cement his right to be king. And a battle ensues, but Perseus brings out the head of Medusa and turns Phineus and his followers to stone. Now, in Jungian terms, rescuing Andromeda, bearing in mind that most of these myths are patriarchal, relates to freeing the captive anima within, an aspect of the higher self. This is common, this is a very common theme in myth. We have St. George in the Dragon, where he rescues a maiden as a particular example. In alchemy, we say that there is a dragon outside the cave of the unconscious which devours maidens, lower nature, dweller, etc., devours our virgin consciousness. We cannot give birth to the Christ child within. But here, Perseus is rescuing Andromeda. He then proceeds to marry her. They have 7 children, 7 chakras, 7 Christian virtues. This is the Hieros Gamos now in microcosm, the sacred marriage, the initiation of the wisdom teachings, the individuation of Jung, where the opposites within the psyche are unified. So if we go to the next image, Perseus then returns home and founds the city of Mycenae. This is common in the Greek hero myths. The hero will complete the quest and then do some great work for the benefit of humanity. This is symbolic of the 3rd initiation of the wisdom teachings, where the initiate is given a portion of the divine plan, such as Moses on Mount Sinai with the tablets of law, and then does something of benefit for humanity. In the Cadmus myth, he founds a citadel of Thebes. He introduces the Phoenician alphabet to the Greeks. Theseus unifies Attica under Athenian rule. Heracles then goes off questing with Jason and the Argonaut. This is a very common theme. So Acrisius gets word of the return of Perseus. So he goes into exile in the region, excuse my pronunciation if it's wrong, Pelastiotus. I'm guessing at that. And there's a place called Larissa within Pelastiotus. And the king there is holding funeral games, sporting event. And Perseus decides to go there and compete in the discus, whilst Acrisius is up there in the stands, probably with a dark pair of shades on. But then Perseus takes a discus and passes it. It's caught in the wind and it strikes Acrisius and kills him. The discus is round, a symbol of wholeness. When we have attained the wholeness which Jung refers to, the higher initiations, there is no place for the lower aspects of the psyche, such as Acrisius, who Campbell would refer to as the tyrant monster. Acrisius is slain. Thereafter, if we look at the next and last image, Perseus and Andromeda and Cassiopeia are elevated to the constellations, wisdom teachings, 5th initiation, liberation from the wheel of rebirth. This is probably the most transcendent symbol the Greeks could come up with. Something, I mean, the Olympus is out of the realm of the human beings. That's where Atma Buddhi Manas, the archetypes are dispensed. But up in the constellations, that is ultimate transcendence. Different Greek myths use different symbolism here. Cadmus and Harmonia go to the Elysian fields, whereas Heracles mounts a funeral pyre and then transmutation by fire, then goes to Olympus and marries Hebe, the daughter of Hera. Whereas Odysseus dies of the Trojan War and has many adventures before the Pyrrhus Gamos with Penelope. But this is my favorite one as a symbol for transcendence. And so I have looked at that myth, applying the wisdom teachings, a bit of Jungian psychology, a bit of Campbell. There's quite a few books I've read which have helped me here. But that is a sort of potted version of the Perseus myth as it appears in my book. It's been a real pleasure to offer it to the group, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it was clear and coherent, and when the time is right, I'm very happy to have a discussion, take any questions.
Lovely. Thank you, Gary. That was great. I don't know how you remember all the names, but well,
been working at it long enough with it. It was actually quite funny because I'm now waiting for the book to come out, and it's been a few months since I've picked it up. Well, metaphorically, looked at it on screen, and I said to one of my friends, I'd better reread some of these myths. So they come back quite quickly because I spent long enough trying to come up with interpretation. What I should say, of course, when we study myth, it's how it resonates within your own psyche. That's what's important. And these characters of the myth will rear up within us. They'll be activated by an event in the outer world. Perhaps we'll project them onto someone in the outer world. But my Medusa may be different to yours, and so on. Or the Hercules myth, my Hydra may be different. It's very important to engage with the myth on your own terms.
Lovely. Right, well, thank you. And looking at the time, I think we will move to the meditation now. So let me have a look. Right, if you get yourself comfortable, we'll just let everything that Gary has been talking about, just let it go, let it settle, and just come into an awareness of this moment in time now, and your desire to be involved in a meditation that's beyond just the benefit for yourself. This is a meditation where we bring our energies and our intentions together in world service, if you like. So before we begin, what I would like to invite us to do is bring our energies together as a group, and that is important. And we'll do that by reciting the affirmation of love. You can recite this out loud or silently to yourself, but the main thing is that it's coming from your heart. So there's that heartfelt intention. In the center of all love, I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Now just gently close your eyes. Get yourself comfortable so that your back is upright but not rigid. I would like to bring us into the present moment, but just before I do that, I want to ground your energy so that we are connected down here in matter on the earth, working as spiritual beings, but connected. So I want you to imagine that you're sending roots or energy down into the earth under the building in which you are, either through your feet, just under the ball of your foot, or through the base of your spine, through the base chakra. So just connect to the earth. And now I want to come into the present moment. So I'll begin by connecting to your sense of feeling. So just be aware of your body sitting on the chair. Be aware of the clothes on your skin. Open to your sense of listening and just allow sounds of this moment to come in. And now gently take that awareness to your breath, and keeping a gentle focus on the breath. Just allow the breath to draw that awareness inward. So with each breath, the breath goes a little deeper, and you can feel your body relaxing. I want you to feel like the breath is opening a channel from your nose and mouth right down through the very center of your being, all the way into your belly. Now with your mind, keep following the breath. If your mind becomes distracted, as soon as you realize, just come back to the breath. Come back without judgment or criticism. Keeping your focus on the breath, just let it take you into a very quiet place inside. And now I want you to bring your focus to the center of your chest. And just imagine that you're breathing into your heart. You're breathing into your heart center, and it is filling with light and with love. And as your heart center fills with light and love, imagine you are connecting to the highest aspect of you, your soul, your higher self. Now I want you to imagine that you are bringing light now down through the crown of your head, down through into all of the major energy centers or chakras in your body. Now this light can be white or golden, or you might prefer violet purple. Imagine that the heart especially is acting as a vessel to receive and distribute this light throughout your body. So the light is connecting all aspects of you. Imagine your whole physical body is filling with this purifying, cleansing, healing light. It is strengthening your immune system, calming your emotions, clearing your mind. bringing all aspects of you into a beautiful coordination. Now let this light start to flow out into the etheric body, or the energy field, the aura that surrounds your physical body. So it is pouring down through your crown, into the heart, distributed through your physical body out into your energy body. Now let it flow out into your home, filling all of your home and all living beings who may share the space with you. Let it flow out to your family. I want you to imagine that this light now is flowing out into your street, filling the hearts and minds of all who reside with you. Imagine now it is flowing out into your community. Now allow it to flow out to fill all of the town or city in which you live. Let it flow out to connect with all of the members of this group meditation, those who are here with us today and those joining us in the recording. Let our combined light flow out to fill this nation, flowing into the hearts and minds of all. Now let it flow out and fill this part of the world, Europe. Allow it to flow out and fill the whole of this hemisphere. And now I want you to imagine that it encompasses the whole of the world. I want you to imagine that you are in space and can see our planet as a whole, surrounded by this light. So the planet has an aura or an energy field of light. And this light comes from our group and all of the groups working in this way throughout the world, all groups combined. See those groups as sparks of light dotted all over the planet. Their combined intention, desiring peace from their heart, from their higher self, drawing this light into their own bodies and radiating it out powerfully as groups. And as the light flows down into our planet, see it healing her and restoring the balance in nature. So the air is clean and fresh, the water's purified and clear, restoring a healthy ozone layer, and our planet heals. See all the animal and plant life flourishing. And now see this light flow into the hearts and minds of all men, bringing peace, goodwill, and right relations between all men, all of mankind. Lifting our awareness and the collective consciousness of all. so that we can live in peace and in harmony and lift the collective vibration to a point where we can change the way we live. Hold this energy. Keep your own heart open. Let this energy radiate out. Working as a group, we are powerful. Find in your heart your love for this planet, your love for mankind, your desire for the very best for all. Envisage a world in which people live in peace, where there is plenty. And we live in harmony with our planet and with each other. Continue to hold this vision. Allow the light, which is the light of love, to flow through you and radiate out. Bringing understanding to the minds of men, invoking the very highest heart qualities, the Christ consciousness in their hearts, and the will to good. And now gently opening your eyes, and you'll see on your screen the words of the World Prayer, the Great Invocation. Silently or aloud, we're going to repeat this invocation together. And when we repeat this invocation, it is important that we repeat it bringing in a feeling of strong intention. Really mean what you're saying. We're going to pause slightly between each stanza just to imagine the effects playing out. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Now bring your energy back into your own energy field, to your own individual body, and slowly come back into the room, into an awareness of your body sitting on a chair, opening your eyes when you are ready. Now I'm going to pause the recording at this point so that we can welcome back. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it up to any comments, questions for Gary. For myself, I could have a go. Or just anything you want to add, anything that sparked, that got you thinking. It's a completely different way of looking at the spiritual journey. So you might be a bit stunned, but let's hear from you anyway. Just let me know, sort of indicate you want me to unmute you or unmute yourself and fire away. Or if you don't want to talk, you can always put something in the chat. If you don't particularly, if you're feeling shy. Okay. So has anyone got any questions specifically for Gary? You all look a bit stunned. I'm sorry. Oh, Linda.
Yeah.
Go.
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
Speak up a bit.
Hi,
Come
Gary.
closer. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. Where did these myths come from?
Well, in terms of mythology, Jungians would say that the various myths are representations of these archetypes or divine ideas. I mentioned Adolf Bastian. He was German, he used the term Elementargedanken, meaning elementary ideas, okay? Don't bother, and Volkergedanken, the folk ideas. Now, why that's important, you have the elementary ideas or archetypes, and different civilizations and cultures put their own spin on them. They apprehend them in different ways, and they're the folk ideas. You know, these various cultures have looked to understand the world, both the outer worlds and the inner worlds, in terms of the various forces at play. And they tend to anthropomorphize these forces. So these myths are coming from people's endeavors to understand what life's about and what various themes are at play. Of course, sometimes myths can be politicized. One culture will assimilate another and take some of the gods, etc. But ultimately, the archetypes themselves are the same. It just depends how we look at them. If you look at different cultures, especially the hero myths, creation myths, you will see very stark similarities between them all. That was, you know, Campbell's great work with the hero's journey. I'd recommend many of his books, or from a female point of view, one of his proteges, Jean Houston, is very, very good. She has a very good book on the voyages of Odysseus called The Hero and the Goddess. And that really helped me appreciate the goddess archetype a lot. So I would recommend Jean Houston. She's got a great ability at putting esoteric things across in a contemporary manner. I was very impressed with that. But ultimately, myths are representations of archetypes. I mean, sometimes a human being will embody an archetype, and there'll be an interaction between the historical figure and the archetype itself. Obviously, Jesus Christ would be one example, but many people are mythology. I mean, in Scotland, William Wallace is like an archetype. You know, he's been mythologized. Winston Churchill and the Lady Diana, they're more contemporary examples of it. You know, the archetype may not exactly match the personality.
So do you think in future centuries those sorts of people will be represented?
Well, that's a very good question. In terms of using the symbolism of myth, different civilizations have used it in different ways, and creation is always evolving. So future generations will see more, probably see deeper things, unravel new things from these mythic symbols. But as Jung said, a symbol cannot be drained of its meaning. It's a representation of something higher. It alludes to that. It is dynamic. It is multivalent, can be perceived in different ways, whether it's a dream symbol or a mythic symbol. And sometimes that symbol can change according to the context in which it is placed. I'm digressing slightly. It's a vast subject, not trying to plug, but when I put this latest book together that's not yet been published, I'd written all the hero myths and thought, oh, thank goodness, I've just got to do an introductory chapter about the spiritual journey. And that was the hardest one to write of them all, bringing in the theosophical stuff, the archetypes, and trying to make it reasonably succinct. But when you look at myth, if you're looking at it in terms of your own psyche, engage with it in your own way. Ask yourself what these symbols mean to you. Because that mythic landscape, all the gods and goddesses, the arch villains, the demons, the heroes, they're all within us. That's the key to it. And they resonate with our psyche.
Yeah. Gary, would you say that in modern day terms, I'm thinking in terms of my children, and you know, if you say that those archetypes are there and every society or culture brings them down in some form, surely in our modern age, we're seeing it in things like the stories of Narnia, like Harry Potter, even Star Wars. We have, you know, good versus evil and the light versus the dark. Even the fairy tales that our children listen to.
Indeed, many Jungians prefer the fairy tales. They feel the archetypes are expressed in a more pure fashion. They don't have the cultural overlay.
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell was the consultant on Star Wars with George Lucas, The Hero's Journey. And C.S. Lewis, I mean, I use one of his quotes in the book. He states that myth is the isthmus, which, what's the word? Myth that links, it joins us up with the vast continent we really belong to. It's something to that, i.e., the lower mind and the higher mind. The vast continent is all the spiritual planes of consciousness. Oh God, I should know that quote, but anyway, I mean, Lewis's books on Narnia are just fantastic. I mean, my favorite film of all time is the third one in the series, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. That is so incredibly symbolic of the spiritual path.
But I know as a child, they capture something deep inside of you before you're aware of anything like that, don't they? And the number of children who at certain stage of their development or a certain stage of seeking are captured by those stories. It resonates with something inside, and they identify with the hero, and it almost teaches them a little bit about life and their spiritual path, because you know they've seen their hero go through hardship, they've seen their hero lose what they loved, they've seen their hero triumph, and there's something fundamental in those stories. that
Myth is the isthmus which links a peninsular world of human thought with that vast continent which we really belong to. Had to
Brilliant.
redeem myself. And I think it's just such a beautiful quote.
Yes.
Yeah, I think with children, it's so important to introduce them to these stories with a mythic theme. I mean, I loved the Greek and Roman heroes as a kid, and Don Chaffee's Jason and the Argonauts, which is on the telly every now and again, and on YouTube. And of course, in this instance, you see Zeus and Hera, Jason going up to the archetypal realm, you know, and as a kid, I just thought it was fantastic, especially when Zeus and Hera were moving the pieces about on a chessboard. I mean, it was so such a great depiction of how archetypes work, how the gods work, so to speak. I mean, a lot of people who are unaware of the wisdom teachings, they think, oh, the pagans, they had all these different gods, but they are just different expressions of the creative process. The ways humanity is interpreting these, there is one life which is transcendent and immanent within all forms. These gods and goddesses are just aspects of that. But if you stick to interpreting goddesses as deity manifest and representations of things that go on as part of this creative process, creation, I would say, as the womb of the goddess, is that gestation where as spiritual beings we realize and ultimately realize the intent of the divine. There are ways. I mean, I just try and look at a few underlying principles. Don't get the intellect over involved. When I first got into myth and legend, my first attempt was writing a talk on the Grail legend. And wonderful stuff, but whenever my intellect got really involved, I couldn't come up with any interpretations of the tales. I had to stop. Then if I went for a walk or was laying in my bed, bang, you know, like
it's
the
intuitive.
sword from the stone, the sword of personality, the higher self being able to extract it from the material entrenchment. In the Greek myths, when Theseus is off to meet his father, he has to recover his sword and sandals from under a rock. It's a similar archetypal theme. We see a lot of this, like Jason helping Hera across the river. She's disguised as a crone. There's an allusion to St. Christopher carrying the Christ. You see these same things, you know, looking at comparative myth. And if you are aware of teachings like Theosophy, the wisdom teachings, etc., it provides a wonderful key. And in my opinion, it kind of brings things alive a bit. It helps to contact that higher manus, exercise the faculty of abstract thought, which is the frontier of human consciousness.
But also it's contacting through, for many people, the intellectual side of it all might not resonate, but especially if they're sort of in their right brain and looking at the overall and that sort of symbolic that symbolic sort of, I don't know, it hits the heart in a way, doesn't it? You know, it
does. It definitely does. And I think also interpreting myth, as I found, I know it's difficult, but try not to look at it from a completely linear perspective. And perhaps take the initiations of Theosophy. Don't expect them to be laid out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a myth. They don't quite work. The myth is a bit like a dreamscape in some ways. You know, things are happening at different times, you know, not necessarily in the order you would expect in the outer world with a rational mind. I mean, this is a vast subject. I mean, I am just touching on it. As I said to a friend, Scott Olson, American guy, I used an American analogy. I said, all I'm trying to do is imagine I'm on an American football field and I'm trying to get the ball to this first down and using myth, and the quarterback's the higher self, you know, and if I get that, someone else can then take it on. I mean, I'm studying Campbell, and just trying to bring it all forward, and then hopefully that will inspire someone else. But we'll never produce a categoric piece of work or a symbolic myth. It's not how myth works. The intellect can't have the final say, because they're an interface between what Lewis said, that vast continent we really belong to in the peninsular world of thought. They are bridges, like that's how we build the Antakarana, with this abstract thought. Theosophy talks of root races, Lemuria, physical body. Imagine Ted's told you this, Atlantis, the astral. The Aryan is the mental body. We have a very well-developed intellect. Some people might argue I don't have, but we've almost overdeveloped it, but we struggle at the level of abstract thought. And this is a way of, addressing this, breaching the frontier. And of course, eventually we talk of the sixth root race and intuition, etc. But that's way, way ahead. We've got to do the work. I know the Logos has a plan, but we're all part of it. We have to take up the ball and run with it. We are aspects of the divine.
Right. Wonderful. Now, has anybody else any comments or questions?
Hi, Liz. By the way, my friend Liz has arrived. I see.
Any more?
Hi, Gary.
Hi, Liz.
Guess I got a little late here, huh? Little bit of a problem with the fuse, I guess.
But if you saw the beach that Liz stays on, I can understand why she's late. It's an absolute paradise in northeastern Brazil, so you're excused.
Oh,
Philip, I think, has a question.
Yeah, Philip. Go.
Do you think you said that the 5 initiations aren't laid out particularly in myths, or I was thinking let's build up.
No, you can see them in myths, but what I say, don't expect them to necessarily be sequential. It's a good key. Right. I mean, as an example, let's take the Perseus myth then. The first initiation is when we waken up to the fact that we're an aspect of the divine, there's more to life than the material world, etc. His is a bit different in some, he's called to adventure, with Medusa, etc. It's like he's aware of the quest, but he goes in at the very, it's like he's taken 2 and 3 together, almost 4 with Medusa. But then the Andromeda thing, sometimes that might occur earlier. We have to bear in mind the Greeks had not read Alice Bailey and Theosophy, obviously, and they had different ways of describing the evolutionary process. So I wouldn't expect them always to be like that. I mean, take the Cadmus myth, though. That's quite a good one. He overcomes this Ismenian dragon, which is guarding a spring of pure water, dweller on the threshold, 3rd initiation. He marries Harmonia. There's the Hyros Gamos coming into it. The house of Cadmus suffers lots of misfortune. But the 4th initiate has to renounce everything to do with the personality. And, Cadmus, you could say, is aware of that. Then Cadmus and Harmonia tire of life in physical form. They're transformed into serpents and go to the Blessed Isles. That's quite a good one. That follows it quite well. But, I would always say, interpreting the myth, treat it a little bit like a dream. Don't expect it always to be sequential. But if you're aware of how Bailey and others describe these initiations, it's a great way to look at the myth, for sure.
It is in the Bible, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, another fantastic collection of myths, as Joseph Campbell said, he'd never understand why these great myths were taken so literally.
Yeah.
Anyone else? It's like the, I mean, here in the UK, all of the, I suppose the more modern stories around Arthur and Camelot and Avalon and Fantastic.
I mean, fantastic. You know, I actually look at it from the Christian one of the Vulgate cycle, the one that created Galahad, the Virgin Knight, who was, you know, he takes a sword out of the stone. They sit at the round table, a mandala symbol, partial vision of the Grail, first initiation. They leave behind the noble life at Camelot because there's something more. They go into the forest of adventure, subjective realms of the psyche, many tests and trials. The Grail is the higher self, but you also have this mysterious character, the maimed king, or in earlier versions, the Fisher King, and he's been wounded in the genitals by Balin the Savage. The maimed king is the monad. Spirit is so handicapped coming into matter, and by attaining the Grail, the knight heals the maimed king. Spirit can express itself. The wasteland is redeemed, becomes an oasis. That is, you know, that is one of the most symbolic of all the great tales. That's my other favorite. If I do write another book on myth, that's one I would. I do actually bring it into some of my stories in the book because I like to be a bit comparative.
Lovely.
I mean, in the Odysseus myth, when he's in the banqueting hall, disguised as a beggar, about to reveal himself to Penelope, there's an order that whichever suitor of Penelope can string this bow and fire it through 12 shafts will win a hand. And of course, all the suitors are hopeless, and they laugh at this beggar who picks it up and strings it and puts it through all the shafts. Then he slays the suitors. But in the Ramayana, we have Rama stringing a bow, stringing Shiva's bow, you know, and using it to slay the demon. Except we see these themes, you know, demonstrating that sort of worthiness. You know, we see these mythic themes in different tales. It's just a wonderful subject, great way to look at mythology. I think it really comes to life. Ganymede is abducted by Zeus, and you know, that is rendering oneself so attractive to the divine that spirit has its way with matter. You know, Ganymede, it's not about homoerotic love, as Xenophon demonstrated. It's about someone being rendered sufficiently attractive for that descent of spiritual fire, to then be a cupbearer for the gods, to pour out the ambrosia or the Hindu Amrita, you know, from the plains of the soul. That's what we're looking at, like when Europa is abducted at the beginning of the Cadmus myth. She was so attractive to Zeus. Zeus adopts all these different forms, and the divine will do that in our lives as well. Spirit will have its way with matter.
Yeah. Wonderful. Right, no more questions or comments. Just to let you know what's coming up for the next 2 weeks. Next week, I'm going to talk about the power of group meditation. Actually, what happens when groups of people come together and meditate, what happens to the people who come together in the group and meditate. There's a lot of science coming out about what actually happens when you participate in group meditation, but also what that effect is in terms of affecting the collective, the power, if you like, of that process. Because then the week after, it's the eve of the Gemini full moon. And the Gemini full moon is the last of the 3 really important spiritual festivals. And Ted Capstead's going to talk to us about the Gemini full moon. And I'm just going to mention a little bit, the next day, which is the Gemini full moon, the Friday, is also what's called World Invocation Day. And that's where people all over the world, all day, repeat the Great Invocation. So we'll just have a little bit of a heads up on what some of those terms in the Great Invocation mean if you're not sure what they mean. And there is a conference that you can tune into online that weekend. So there's sort of 4 days. There's another meditation on the Friday night. There's 4 days of really high level spiritually inspiring material available. So we're going to start, so next week, sort of preparatory, so that you know what's going on when you come together in group meditation and how that is an act of service to mankind. It's something you do for the good of all. And you benefit as well, but that's not your intention. Okay, we'll leave that there. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful evening, and thank you, Gary. Yeah.
Thank you, Teresa, for inviting me, and it's been lovely meeting you all. I really enjoyed that. So.
Yeah. Well, we're getting these Thursdays are going to continue. It seems it's out of my hands. I'm just the vessel. Right. Have a lovely evening. Namaste.
Namaste.